Couldn't be here tonight, and you need to be talking about this man, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and why he would be a great governor for the state of Texas. Mr. West, would you join us on the stage?
Be sure you do not eat all of your dessert, because when this is over, the push-up challenge.
Oh, no push-up challenge tonight. That's only if you're a reporter who comes in late to a press conference and you start to ask me questions, and every question is 10 push-ups. And so that's what happened down in Austin. Can I push this back a little bit? I think it's a little better so that we can be a lot more connected. What a pleasure and honor to be back down here in Hill Country, to be back down here in Kerrville, and all of the great folks that have been so supportive over these years. And again, I just want to tell you the great success story of you all electing the youngest city council member in the state of Texas, Roman Garcia, 19 years of age. That is an incredible story across this state. But I want to do something a little bit different tonight. I mean, earlier today, we talked about specific issues, and you can go to our website, west4texas.com, west4texas.com, and you can see, what we say as far as the border and the economy and property taxes and all of these different things. But I think what we really need to do is talk about how we got to this point, even in Texas. Because so often we don't think strategically like the left does. Yeah. And so when you look at where we are in the United States of America, where you look at where we are in the state of Texas, this is not something that just popped up on the radar screen a couple of days ago or a couple of years ago. This is something that they've been working at consistently while we've been out there as conservatives, working hard, raising our families, and doing all those type of things. And when I travel around the state, you hear so many people that kind of have that despondent look, that depressed, oh, it's too late, we can't do anything about it. It's never too late. And I just want to share this story about an incredible man. This guy is, without a doubt, my favorite character in American military history. And maybe you've heard about him. His name is Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was not a military man. He was just a simple, ordinary guy. He was a professor of rhetoric at Bowdoin College in Maine. With Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, it came upon his heart that he just didn't want to sit there and continue to be a professor of rhetoric at a time when he saw his country being torn apart. He wanted to do something about it. He wanted to go down. He wanted to be a part of the Union Army. And because of the fact that he was an educated man, the Army made him a lieutenant colonel. It took me doggone almost 20 years to make lieutenant colonel. That maybe says something about me. But the thing is that they put him in charge of an infantry regiment, 20th Maine Regiment. His very first combat engagement, if you know Civil War history, was a place called Fredericksburg. That didn't end up too well for the Union, because Robert E. Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia had the high ground at Fredericksburg. And they pinned down the Union, and they really decimated them at Fredericksburg. But then the winter came in, and then in the following year, in 1863, Robert E. Lee decided that once again they would try to invade the North. Previously to that, they had tried to invade going through Maryland, through Antietam, and they were pushed back. But this time they decided they were going to go up through Pennsylvania. And they were going to be hidden behind the Blue Ridge Mountains. Now the Army of the Potomac, which had reconstituted, and that's where Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was part of, were trying to track and find out where Lee was going. And in July the 1st of 1863, General J.N.L. Buford, the Union commander, found Lee's Army of Northern Virginia at a town called Gettysburg. An incredible battle that really set the stage for the future of this great nation. But the thing is this, on the second day of that battle, the Confederate forces were led by a Texan by the name of John Bell Hood. And John Bell Hood's mission, given to him by Robert E. Lee, was to attack the very far flank of the Union Army that was on a little place called Little Round Top. The entire Army of the Potomac was in what they call a fish hook, 90,000. And Robert E. Lee knew if he could take out that last position on Little Round Top, they could come around in a circle, take out the entire Army of the Potomac, and then they could march on Washington, D.C. And who was the person at Little Round Top? A professor of rhetoric, an ordinary man, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, with a depleted unit, the 20th Maine. And on that hot July day, the 2nd of July, John Bell Hood and his Confederate soldiers start charging up Little Round Top. Casualties began to mount. Chamberlain himself was shot in the thigh, but he still maintained his command of his unit. And then that moment came that every military commander is fearful of. They ran out of ammunition. And the Confederates were coming back again. Chamberlain's orders were that he could not surrender, he could not retreat from that position on Little Round Top. So here is a man, there was a professor of rhetoric, not a trained military man, with a depleted unit, casualties are mounting, he's been shot in the leg, they have no more ammunition. What does Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain do? He orders something that had not been said and done in the Union Army up to that point in the Civil War. He ordered a bayonet charge down Little Round Top. And so surprised the Confederate troops that they all surrendered en masse. Now, here's a man never trained in the military, leads a bayonet charge. Later on, he goes on to even greater exploits. He becomes the man that is selected to be the commander of the honor guard when the Confederacy surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. And then after that, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, professor of rhetoric, goes on to become a two-term governor of the great state of Maine. And oh, by the way, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. A professor of rhetoric. See, the thing that I want each and every one of you to understand that there are no obstacles out here in America right now. There are opportunities. And I think about what the Bible teaches us. The Bible teaches us in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, that there are going to be trials and tribulations. But out of trials and tribulation, it produces perseverance. And from perseverance, it produces proven character. And from proven character, it produces hope. Not a hope that is rooted in man, but a hope that is rooted in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We've got an opportunity, a moment in this time, to be that incredible beacon for the rest of this nation, right here in Texas. Right. We've got the opportunity to show the rest of the United States of America why, as I always tell people, the lone star is the star that illuminates the other 49 on the American flag. That's the challenge that you have to step up to. Now I'm going to share with you a little quote. And I know Amy was sitting there, she's saying, boy, you really know all that history stuff, and you're really smart and all that stuff. Well, that's because I'm a dummy, and the Army taught me that you have note cards and you write everything on it so that you don't forget stuff. I wasn't in the Air Force. Air Force guys are real smart. I want to share this quote with you. Because when you understand this quote, this is where we are in America. The uncontested absurdities of today are the accepted slogans of tomorrow. They come to be accepted by degrees, by dint of constant pressure on one side and constant retreat on the other. Until one day, when they are suddenly declared to be the country's official ideology. Those words were written in the 1950s by Ayn Rand. That's where we are today. The other side has been pushing toward this moment for the last 67 years. And what we have been doing is constantly excusing, constantly saying they don't really mean it. They're not really those type of people. No, they're not socialists. No, they're not communists. No, they're not Marxists. Even though we saw them come in and overtake our system of academia. Even though we have seen what has happened, we were just talking about Room 222 and Welcome Back Kotter. I remember as a kid when I could sit down with my family and watch the Grammys. Did y'all see the last Grammys? It was horrible. But that's the slow march that has happened in all of our cultural, societal operating systems since Ayn Rand wrote this in the 1950s. And what we have is a challenge today, the absurdities. Who would have ever thought that we would live in a nation where the federal government would say, they're not going to protect the sovereignty of the United States of America? But that's what has happened. Who would have ever thought that we would live in the United States of America where the federal government would pay people to stay at home and to not work? But that's exactly what has happened. Who would have ever thought that we would live in the United States of America where people would say, you can be whatever gender that you want. And we would actually have some places that would enact laws to say that there's no such thing as little boy or little girl, and you can just put another box in there, and you can decide for your child whatever sex that you want that child to be. Who would have ever thought that we would have in the United States of America Olympic athletes that would stand on a podium, and when the national anthem is being played, they turn their back and cover up their head? See, I remember an Olympic athlete in 1936. His name was Jesse Owens. And Jesse Owens in the Munich Olympics was there when Adolf Hitler was coming to power in Nazi Germany. And Adolf Hitler did not think that people like Jesse Owens were real people. And there he won that gold medal. And if you have not recently gone back and looked at that picture, there is Jesse Owens in 1936, standing on that gold medal podium, saluting, while the national anthem was being played. Saluting the anthem and the flag of a country that he knew when he came back to that country, he would have to go through a different door, or he would have to go through a different bathroom, or he would have to go through a different water fountain. But somehow, slowly over all of these years, we have started talking about how people are more so victims than there are victors in the United States of America. And that's the problem that we have here, even in the state of Texas. When you look at the political breakdown by county in the state of Texas, we need to be really concerned because the exact same thing that happened in my birth state of Georgia can happen here in Texas. 5 cities in Georgia, 5 areas, resulted in 2 avowed socialists being senators for the state of Georgia. Atlanta metropolitan area, Macon, Columbus, Augusta, Savannah. You look at the map of Texas, where do you see the blue? Dallas County, Harris County, Travis County, Bexar County, El Paso County. This is why we have to stand up as constitutional conservatives. This is why this is not about 2 different political parties. This is all about 2 different philosophies of governance. This is about 2 ideologies. One ideology that has never been successful anywhere in the world, but yet we see people in Cuba that are out there with American flags cheering on, saying that they want liberty, but yet we have members of our own House of Representatives and United States Senate who were side with the government in Cuba over liberty and freedom. How do we get to this point? Let me tell you something. We have got to start taking back our homes. The fact that we have children and grandchildren, that we are ceding over to teachers, ceding over to professors, so that they can inculcate their principles and values. You know, I shared about it earlier today. The Texas State Board of Education, 15 members on the Texas State Board of Education. We came 3 votes shy of pornography being taught to elementary school kids in the state of Texas. Absolutely. If you have not looked at the recent sex education curriculum, that was passed unanimously in Austin, Texas by their school board. That's exactly the same thing that they try to get taught all across the state of Texas. 3 votes shy, 9-6. And I think if I'm right, Amy, you talked about how you lost one of those 9 here on your Texas State Board of Education. This is why we've got to get engaged, we've got to get involved. As a governor in Texas, why are we putting people that are progressive socialists on our boards of regents? Why are we looking at our Texas Education Commission and we're putting people in charge in the Texas Education Commission that are avowed leftists? Because then they have the impact and the influence of the curriculum and what's being taught. Lee Spencer White has done an incredible job defending the Alamo, defending the cenotaph, because she's a descendant of the Alamo defenders. But yet, Lee, I'm sure you know, that on June the 8th of this year, there was a book that was written by 3 so-called Texans. The title of that book was Forget the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. See, if we don't start doing what it says in Proverbs 22:6, that you train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. We can talk about the oil and gas industry. We can talk about the things we need to do to make sure that we don't have so much solar and wind output. But if we don't start asserting ourselves as parents and adults in our homes and our households, it's all going to be for naught. And the most important thing is you have to have an example at the head of a state like Texas that says we're going to draw a line in the sand, and you're not going to come in here. And you're not going to bring your principles, your values. You're not going to change Texas, because what we do in Texas, it works. It's successful. Texas is seen around the world because of its rugged individualism. Texas is seen around the world because there's that aura. I'm in Afghanistan, in Kandahar, Afghanistan, going through Kandahar in a convoy. And what do I see on a little Afghan boy? A Dallas Cowboys t-shirt. You know why? Because that star represents something. You can travel anywhere in the world. You can say you're from Pennsylvania. You can say you're from Wyoming, Montana, Georgia, Tennessee, wherever. But when someone says to a person in Afghanistan, in Korea, in Saudi Arabia, that I'm from Texas, people kind of perk up. Because there is an aura about this great state that we are losing. We cannot lose our sovereignty. 1,200 miles of border with a failed state. That's really what Mexico has become. Because the narco-criminal terrorists are in control of Mexico. And people are asking me, why isn't Texas stopping? Why are we sitting around and watching people coming across our border? Why aren't we standing up and remembering what the 26-year-old said at the Alamo? In that letter that he wrote February 24th of 1836, he said, in Texas, here at this Alamo, there's no surrender. There is no retreat. And he pledged to us so that we could be here tonight, victory or death. And even in losing their lives, they won the greater struggle for us to be here today. They rallied people to that cause. Today, we need to rally to that cause. Right. It's so important that you understand that now is our moment. Now, the thing about conservatives, Matt, and I like to talk about SEC football because that's how I grew up. Old school SEC football, Bear Bryant, Shug Jordan, Vince Dooley, it was all about the ground game. You know, you sit there, it might be boring, but it was incredible to watch Alabama, whoever, Georgia, Auburn, LSU, whatever. First down, pick up 3 yards. Second down, pick up 4 yards. Third down, pick up another 3 yards. What do you get? First down. And they keep going down the field, 15, 16 plays. But you know what it ends up with? A touchdown. Because they understood back then it was incrementally picking up ground, picking up yardage, and getting to that pay grade. That's what the progressive socialist left is all about. That's why we find ourselves today, because they have been slowly picking up yards, picking up yards, picking up yards. Now what do, Matt? Well, we get the ball on our side, and the very first thing we do, that's right. We send the wide receiver streaking down the sidelines, and the quarterback misses it. So now it's second down and 10. So we then try a little running play, okay? And maybe we pick up 3 yards. It's third down and 7. The other side knows the play you're going to call. And they drop back into a prevent defense, and you end up having a punt. See, we have not done a good job as conservatives going on offense. We have sat around here and we have watched the left decimate families. We have sat around here and watched the left decimate our Judeo-Christian faith heritage to the point where now God can't even get Adam and Eve right. That's basically what they're saying. We have sat around here and watched them decimate a great free market economy. We have sat around here and watched them decimate individual rights, freedoms, and sovereignty. We've sat around here and now the last great institution in the United States of America, our military, they're decimating that. And oh, by the way, if you haven't been paying attention, there was a critical race briefing that was given to the Texas State Guard just recently. Who's in charge of the Texas State Guard? It's the governor, not Joe Biden. We've got issues that we got to stand up and we got to fight for. And that's what I'm asking you to allow me to do. To go into the arena and do the fight for you. The left knows that they cannot control the United States of America until they control Texas. But I say that they will never be able to control Texas. I say that now is our time to draw that line in the sand, and we stand and we fight. If we push them back, and we must continue to push them back, then we will save the rest of the United States of America. We can be the inspiration. And I got to tell you, as I said earlier today, after I retired from Fort Hood, Texas, I lived in South Florida for 10 years. I am tired of my buddies back in Florida calling me and telling me how great Ron DeSantis is. And all the stuff that they're doing in Florida that we ain't getting done here. I'm tired of it. I want to make them eat some crow. Okay? So the bottom line is this. It starts in our homes. We want to secure our border, it starts in your home. You want better education opportunities, it starts in your home. You want to have a strong oil and gas industry and make sure that we don't look like North Korea the next time wintertime comes around, it starts in your home. If you want to make sure that we have election integrity, it starts in your home. If you want to make sure that we understand civics and the roles and responsibilities of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, so that the executive is not doing executive overreach over the legislative branch in Texas, it starts in your home. We've got to take this mantle ourselves. We've got to start training up the future generations. And we must also, as it says in the Bible, iron sharpens iron. When we come together, we have got to better train ourselves up so that we are informed, we are educated, and then we can be activated. Too often we go out on this ideological battlefield and we ain't ready. We're not able to deconstruct the argument of the other side. Tonight, 57 Texas Democrats on MSNBC for a town hall about election integrity. If I was sitting in the governor's mansion, the minute those 3 private airplanes set ground in Washington, D.C., there would have been a press conference, and we would have announced 57 vacated seats in the Texas Congress. And then we would announce a special election. That's what we have to start doing. Yes. To send a message to the other side that your petulant, imbecilic actions to undermine our representative democracy will not be tolerated in the Lone Star State. Because it's very Pavlovian. If we continue to allow bad behavior to be rewarded, you get more of that bad behavior. That's why back in the day, some of y'all know what I'm talking about, we used to have mommies and daddies that would whoop our butt. You did not see kids when I was growing up throwing tantrums in the grocery store aisle, okay? Because they didn't get the right type of box of cereal. Because we had adults that were adults and no one told them that they did not have a right to discipline their own child. So train up your child in the way that they should go. This is our moment. Texas is going to shine bright. And we are going to be the state that restores this great constitutional republic. Because each and every one of you realizes that you will not be the first generation that passes on less than what was passed on to you. That's the bottom line. So let's have your questions. let's have a great conversation to close out the evening. What's on your mind?
So, Colonel, would you tell us, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the 7 or 8 points that the governor has for correcting the situation at the border, tell us why that is not going to be an effective tool.
Well, it's not going to be an effective tool because you are not going down and, number one, a full mobilization of our National Guard. You're not allowing these law enforcement officers here the ability to detain, arrest, and deport. Because if you have a Customs and Border Patrol and ICE that are saying that, you know, we're not going to do the job that we're supposed to do because the federal government has advocated that responsibility, it's not going to happen. And again, 1,055 miles of border wall is not going to be built anytime soon. You still have a problem. You need to designate those criminal and terrorist cartels as such. And therefore, you here in Texas, we can go after their banking systems. We can go after their accounts. We can freeze those assets. We can seize those assets. We need to tax the remittances, all of these type of things. But this is not your typical political response. This is a constitutional crisis that we're facing. And the Constitution grants to the states the ability to protect themselves from what the Founding Fathers call invasion. Read in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3, Article 4, Section 4, and it lays it out. You're living in the state that is the #1 state in America for human and sex trafficking. Dallas and Houston, top 2 cities for human and sex trafficking in the United States of America. We have got to get serious about this. I had a woman that came up to me later on when I was in Fredericksburg, and she asked me my position on opening up casinos. And I said, no. She said, well, don't you want the economy to grow? I said, you are living in a state where sex trafficking is immense and is rampant. Why would you want to open up casinos? And guess what's going to happen at those casinos? It's a magnet for more sex trafficking. Am I right? Am I wrong? And so why would we want to do that? And so we've got to stop worrying about how we can put more money in our pockets because we've got to start being a moral people. And there's nothing moral about human and sex trafficking. There's nothing moral about a government that is promoting human trafficking to the tunes of $25 million. That's what the cartels are making just on human trafficking. I haven't even talked about the drug trafficking. So again, you want to secure your border? You put boots on the ground to interdict all of these infiltration routes that are out there. Yes, sir.
Could you comment on Abbott's handling of the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT?
Well, again, I hate to tell you, but, and let me clarify something. I'm not running against Governor Abbott. I'm running for Texas. I'm running for you. And that's the important thing. So, you follow the money. That's where it is in politics. And so what you end up seeing and happening is that you have a lot of these public utilities companies that are dictating what they want to do and what they want to have happen. You know, the fact that the week before Texas went dark, Governor Abbott got an award from a wind energy PAC for being a wind energy champion. And then a week later, wind energy failed you all here in the state of Texas because it was a 23%. We have turned over 23% of our energy distribution plan to wind energy. And you know what happened on that Sunday before the storm hit? It dropped down to 3%. And there was no backup plan. And there was no power generation that could come in and backfill that. And so that's what ended up happening. You will not see me allow anyone to be on ERCOT and they don't even live in the state of Texas. Okay? So that's not going to happen. Another thing is that we're not going to have people that are commissioners on the Public Utility Commission that are tied to the folks that are basically trying to tell us what they are and what they are not going to do. Okay? It's just about following the money. So never again. And the other thing is that Texas, before we sell any energy to another state or to another country, we're going to make sure that we have plenty of reserve power in the winter and also in the summer so that we don't have blackouts or brownouts. That's the key thing. Yes, sir.
You disappointed me when you resigned as chair. And I suspected there was something, I hoped there was something good coming, and there is. So tell me, as when you're elected governor, how will you ensure that the Republican platform is enforced.
Well, that's why I stepped down so that I could step up. Okay? Because as the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, when I'm standing there being the champion of the priorities, the legislative priorities of the Republican Party, and I'm seeing Republican legislators that are basically saying, you know, go screw yourself. I did what a paratrooper does. I'm going to go in and I'm going to put myself in a position where you will listen to what I have to say. So therefore, as the governor, the very first priorities, legislative priorities in 2023, if I'm elected governor, will be the Republican Party legislative priorities. Okay? It's not going to be my priorities, whatever, or some special interest priorities. It will be the Republican Party priorities. You know, think about this. School choice. No school choice in Texas. Taxpayer-funded lobby. Still having taxpayer-funded lobby. No monument protection or historical marker protection in Texas. We didn't even get election integrity done in the legislative session because they punted it till the last minute. That should have been one of the first things they did early on in February, definitely by the middle of March. That should have been taken care of, not pushed down to the end. But you know what is most abhorrent to me? Is that in the state of Texas, we are chemically and physically castrating our children.
That's right.
Puberty blockers, hormonal therapies, and physical castration of children in the state of Texas. When we got other states that have made that to a felony crime. So I will tell you that as delegates to the state convention, I'm going to look and see what are your legislative parties. Those are my legislative parties. And we're going to make those things happen. So that's where the emphasis is going to be. Anybody else? So hopefully you understand and you're not disappointed anymore. Anybody else?
You were talking about wind energy. There are a lot of abatement programs.
Section 313.
Yes, sir.
We got to get rid of Section 313. What is happening is that we are subsidizing wind and solar energy, the green energy programs, through our school boards. And then your taxpayer dollars backfill that money into the school boards. It's a shell game. And so we're going to stop this subsidizing of wind and solar energy. Because if you are able to compete in the free market system for energy distribution, then you should fairly compete. Now, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at putting in more nuclear power plants here.
Amen.
Clean energy, we need to have it back. We're the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We're going to make sure that we have good, strong natural gas power plants. We're going to do the right preventive maintenance checks and services so that when we try to click on and increase the outflow and the output, we don't all of a sudden see that it's not ready to do that. And the other thing is that we were forced into closing 3 coal-fired plants. Let's go back and look and see how we can have those clean coal-fired plants once again, because all of those reliable sources of energy is what we need to have here in the state of Texas. So this whole Alexander Ocasio-Cortez Green New Monster deal, that's not going to, that dog don't hunt, okay, here in Texas. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Simplify.
China has purchased 150,000 acres in the Del Rio area.
Yep.
It overlooks a Air Force base.
Laughlin Air Base, where they do
It's
flight
3 miles
training.
from the Mexican border.
Yes.
Ostensibly to put in a wind farm. It doesn't pass the sniff test.
It does not pass the sniff test, and I will tell you that we're going to stop the Chinese infiltration into the state of Texas. Okay? But it's not just this, okay? What the gentleman is talking about, that former general in the People's Liberation Army of China, is not just the land that he has bought on this side of the Rio Grande River. He has also purchased the contiguous land on the south side of the Rio Grande River. And why is that so important? Ladies and gentlemen, you have 232 tunnels that come out of Mexico into Texas. Okay? They ain't digging tunnels so that they can look for coal. They're digging tunnels because these are infiltration routes. That's why you need to have full deployment of your National Guard down there to go after these tunnel systems. The other thing is that Confucian academies, we have a lot of these Confucian academies in our colleges and universities here. should not have that. They are fomenting communist Chinese propaganda, to include at Texas A&M University. The other thing is that you have 2 telecommunications headquarters controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, Huawei, ZTE. One is in Plano, the other is in Richardson. Richardson is the fastest growing tech hub outside of Austin. We're going to get rid of those things. We cannot put ourselves in bed with our #1 geopolitical foe, which is Communist China.
That wind farm that they're putting in, trying to put in Del Rio, is right in the flight pattern.
It's in the flight pattern, absolutely.
Of the airport.
Yep, and that's where you have, that's an Air Force flight training facility. That's where we're training our future pilots. And why in God's green earth will we allow a former general in the People's Liberation Army of China to buy attractive land right there near one of our most important military installations? And also, just so you know, Fort Bliss, Texas, the last Army Armored Division, that's where it's housed. They're putting illegal immigrants on Fort Bliss, Texas. Yes, sir.
Could you comment on how you would set up your COVID program?
How I would set up the COVID program, first and foremost, no elected official has an enumerated power to decide who or what is essential. So I'm not going to shut down any business. What I would do as far as the COVID program, I would provide you with all of the best and latest information, and you make the decision. But I'm not going to tell you got to shut yourself in your home. I'm not going to tell you you have to shut down your business. It's time that we start to treat people as adults. I'm not going to mandate masks. And the thing that is very disconcerting is that the Texas State Constitution is very clear. Even in an emergency, after 30 days, you're supposed to bring the legislature back if you're going to continue to try to implement any further orders and mandates. It has to go through a legislative process. That did not happen. So I am not going to do that. And I don't believe in mandating vaccines. When we were in the military, we had to get stuff. Now I ain't in the military anymore. Ain't nobody gonna tell me I gotta get stuff. Okay? And this is what I want you to use. Use the language of the left. What does the left say when it comes to murdering unborn babies? My body, my choice. So how is it all of a sudden now, when it comes to something that's not FDA approved, that's still experimental, you're going to tell me that I have to get it stuck inside me? See, that's the power if we start to use their language against them. And that's what I want you to start doing. Yes, ma'am?
We've had a lot of these issues for years and years, and Texas, has tried to fix a lot of things. Border, we lived on the border for 4 years and we saw it.
Yeah.
For the last 4 years, it was good. Now we're back again, everybody coming in.
Yep.
We're seeing a lot. It's getting close to Kerrville, is really what's
Absolutely.
happening. It's getting closer and closer, and all these things, sex trafficking, for years and years, Pennsylvania was this. Now it's in our doorstep, so there's a lot of things we've been fighting for years. So what are you going to do that the other governors have not been able to do before with pushback?
I'm going to stand on the Constitution. And the Constitution says when the federal government abdicates their duty and responsibility, the states have the constitutional duty and responsibility to protect their sovereignty. And that's something that we have not done. Lots of times what I learned, when I was up in Congress, politics has become a self-licking ice cream cone.
Jesus.
You know what I mean by that? They perpetuate problems because they don't want to ever solve them, because then what do they have to do? And so I think it's so important that you go in with a different perspective and you say, we're going to get this fixed, and we're going to continue to go on till you get it fixed. And if you don't want your ICE agents, if you don't want your Border Patrol agents to do what constitutionally they're supposed to do, then we'll find our constitutional officers, being our sheriffs, we'll stand up our own Border Patrol, we will seize the assets from these drug cartels, and we will use it for our border security fund. But it's time that you do something a little bit different. And I'm just an old dumbass paratrooper. Okay, the thing about paratroopers, we really don't like to follow all the rules anyhow. You know what we do? We find the enemy, we fight him. And the enemy right now is coming across our borders. And we're going to do all of the right things to protect you as the citizens of the state of Texas. And hopefully, if I'm elected, then we set a standard of leadership. We set an example that you all will vote others that will come in afterwards instead of this constant pendulum swing that we see happening. I mean, we had this border thing fixed, and what do? We go out there and we vote to the other side because we get hung up in feelings and emotions and all this type of stuff, and so orange man bad. And don't vote for orange man. And now look at what is happening in our country. I just had a friend of mine that texted me today. He paid $46 just to fill up half a tank of gas. Inflation is real, and it's happening. So with the border, we have a national security issue, we have a local crime and criminality issue that affects what is going on in our local communities. It's a healthcare issue, it's an education issue, it's a multi-headed hydrant, and we gotta get it fixed. And I promise you that I will do everything possible to get that fixed. Yes, sir?
Three of the representatives, the Democrat representatives that went to DC that had the vaccine, they tested positive, correct?
Yes.
And so, I'm a physician, I'm an ER physician in Fredericksburg, but this is a bioweapon. It's not necessarily a virus. This was put together for a long time.
And look, I said that early on in the beginning because when you look at Wuhan, it is not just the Wuhan virology lab, it is also the Chinese Communist Party, their military's bioweapons facility is also in Wuhan. And they've been doing this gain of function testing or whatever. And this is what they have unleashed on the world.
And all of a sudden, the virus shows up in every country, which is usually seasonal, and it should go with the winds and everything else. And how does it show up everywhere else all of a sudden? So my thoughts are also, you're going to start seeing what they call the Delta variant.
Oh, I know. And then, now they have the Lambda variant.
Yeah, I know.
that's
And
coming
how
out.
can you predict this?
And so you're going to have the Echo variant, the Foxtrot variant, the Golf, the Hotel, the Indian, the Juliet, the Kilo, the Mike, November, Oscar, Papa. Because what is this all about really, folks? Control. It's about control. And understand this. It's a great quote from Benjamin Franklin. I shared it earlier today. Those who would surrender essential liberty for temporary security, in the end deserve neither liberty nor security. You have just been participating in the biggest Pavlovian experiment ever. And you allow people to shut you down over a virus that has a 99.96% recovery rate.
And we have multiple old remedies, like hydroxychloroquine and some of these things that ivermectin, when I'm using all of them, and I've already been. There's a lot of people putting a thumb on me for prescribing. However, that being said, and so we're using some kind of experimental mRNA but that's experimental, and people get onto you for something that's been around for almost 60 years. It's safe.
Well, follow the money.
Yeah.
And look at the pharmaceutical companies that are making a lot of money off of this. I'm going to go back here to this young lady.
Colonel West, after my husband and I came to your meeting in Fredericksburg, we had an appointment with our financial advisor, who thinks just like we all do here. While we were waiting for him in the office, 8 military personnel got out of an armored vehicle. They had pamphlets. They came into the office to drop off the pamphlets and urge us to get vaccinated, with all the information, where to get vaccinated and such. Our first thought was, why aren't you down at the border protecting us? And the military now is urging us to get vaccinated.
My question is, when you say military,
Yeah.
whether National Guard,
They were in, now they were in a Humvee type of vehicle. My husband being in both Vietnam and Desert Storm, we know the uniforms. To me, it looked like the Desert Storm uniforms they were in, but I didn't see any ID. And I know my husband always had the picture ID on him. Now, and am I right, didn't the Army go back to the old conventional style, uniform?
No, it's an updated
Okay.
camouflage pattern.
Yeah.
But the next time something like that happens, you should take a picture of the folks, because everyone should have their branch of service on one side and their last name on the other side.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
They didn't.
They did not.
I don't know where they came from. Yes, sir. This is your third question. You're supposed to spread questions around. Like socialism. You spread questions.
You want me to move over there?
No, sir. I see that. The shell game, yeah.
Good. Could you, and this may not be the right time, but could you comment on how you intend to organize, say, Kerr County? I mean, your representative here, to get things.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we are looking at, we're just going to turn into our third week of our campaign. We have had, I think, over 2,000 people that have signed up as volunteers. We're going to open up our campaign headquarters up in Addison. And what we want to do is break people down in regions. And we're going to look at, great folks like Amy and others who can kind of honcho our efforts in respective regions. And it's kind of like you have brigades, battalions, companies, platoons, and squads. That's what we want to break it down so that we can go all the way down to the grassroots level. So we're going to look at those key individuals that can be the voices, the speakers, the influential folks for our campaign all throughout the state of Texas.
So,
Now, this is the most important thing. We have got to get into the major urban population centers. See, the great story that came out of November 2020, we flipped the Rio Grande Valley.
Yeah.
They had never seen the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley before. They saw a lot of me. And guess what ended up happening? Zapata County, 100 years, never been Republican, became Republican. You look at Roman Garcia. You look at Mayor Villalobos, first Republican mayor in the Rio Grande Valley, McAllen, Texas, in 36 years. So I will tell you that we have to take our message everywhere. Blacks and Hispanics are naturally conservative. The problem is that we have not engaged with them and talked to them about it for so long that they've heard the message of the other side, but now when they get to hear our message, they don't want to be victims. They want to be victors. And so, how many folks here know about the Monday message that I put out? Remember when I was chairman, I put out the Monday message. We still put out the Monday message through our website, westfortexas.com. You know what the purpose of the Monday message is? To get us all on the same sheet of music. Everything that I know in my beady little brain, I try to make sure that y'all know that, because we have got to be like this in delivering that message wherever. So I want you, as we go forward, and I always say, find 5 people that don't think and believe as you do. 5, and get 3. You can get 3 out of 5. And if you get 3 out of 5, you know what they call that? A landslide. No, serious, 3 out of 5. Last time I checked, it's 60%. You get 60% of the political race, that's a landslide. That's a woodshed. Okay? Y'all know what woodshed is, right? Y'all do something. That's what we have to start doing. So a landslide starts with each and every one of you going out there saying, what do I need to know? How can I go out and make your own 3x5 cars so that you can talk about these issues very succinctly and very direct. And when they start to get mad, when they start frothing at the mouth and calling you names and all of this, instead of being discouraged and disengaging, you should step forward and continue to engage, because you're winning the debate. You're winning the argument. You have beat them past their talking point. But too often what we do is, well, you're a white supremacist. Oh, I don't want to be called that. You're a racist. Oh, please don't call me that. And we retreat when we should be pressing forward. There is no reason why anybody that's a Republican in Texas should be called a white supremacist and racist. The Republican Party of Texas was founded on July the 4th of 1867 by 150 black men in Houston, Texas. What were their parties doing at the same time? They were the ones creating the Ku Klux Klan. But see, if you guys don't know those little nuggets of information, then you lose on this ideological battlefield. So my most important thing is to get us all on the same sheet of music. Anybody else? I think the rain stopped, so. Yes, ma'am, last question.
On the day after you are inaugurated as the governor, I'm not going to say on that day you're going to be way too busy, but the day after, What are 3 things you're going to accomplish?
Without a doubt, I'm sure that I'll have a lot of news conferences or whatever, but I think that the most important thing is to stand up and start talking about priorities going forward. Like I said, the Republican legislative priorities, and making sure that we can do what is right as far as our border security, do what is right as far as our oil and gas industry, do what is right as far as our education. I want to be able to get my vision out there for people to understand. So that's probably the first thing that I would do. It's just the same as when after I became a battalion commander up in Fort Hood, Texas, the next day I brought the entire battalion into a theater and we talked about the 5 standing orders, which was my philosophy of being a commander. Keep your bayonet sharp, because you never know when you have to go into the close fight with the enemy, but also this is your bayonet. You got to keep a sharp mind. Keep your individual weapon clean, because those of y'all that have been in combat, when you pull the trigger and it goes click, you don't want it to go click. So you have to keep your individual weapon clean, but this is also your individual weapon. One person does, another person checks. Be the expert in your lane and knowledgeable in another. And in all things, be a professional and be a soldier. Those are my 5 standing orders. And what I made sure is that every single one of our soldiers, they knew those 5 standing orders. 2 o'clock in the morning on a guard post in Iraq, what's standing order number 3? So that's what I want to do the very first day, is for every single Texan to know exactly what our priorities are to protect and preserve the Lone Star State. God bless all of you.
I've talked to my uncle. He said in Pleasanton, Texas, there's a prison there. He has a ranch near there, and he said most of the prisoners there are not from south of the border. They're Middle Eastern. So there has been an invasion of this land. I think it's going to take military leadership to draw the line that he's talking about. I'm sure Colonel West will stay. If those of you would like to visit with him and take pictures. And by the way, Kitty Alger, raise your hand. You also helped us. She's another one of our hostesses. And I forgot to mention her. So we're thankful to all the hostess, but if you want to take a picture of Colonel West, would be over here in this corner. If you'd move it quickly, because we don't want to hog his time, and I know some of you may be tired. Thank you all for coming, and hope you enjoyed your evening.
Send our prayers.
I know we met before when he was sending my
Nice meeting you guys. All right. See you all. Thank you so much.